Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. This is Coffee Time with Juxtaposition. Coffee Time with Juxtaposition. Do check out the link below, Coffee Time with Juxtaposition, to obtain one of these handsome coffee mugs. If you send in some money to my P.O. box or become a paid member and contribute to the coffee chat time, you can get one of these cups. I will ship it to your address. Today's video will be entitled Childhood Development and Pren, um, Freedom versus Supervision and Pren. All right. I'm talking about how children are raised today in the metaverse with cell phones and ADD, attention deficit disorder, distractions, versus the way I was raised, which was unsupervised to a great extent. I was supervised, but not 24/7, not with flock cameras or ring cameras or Fitbits or cell phone or tracking devices. Was not. I came across an article written by a woman who grew up in Malaysia, who was educated in Australia and now lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And she's much younger than me. Her name is Anua Kalau. So hard to pronounce her name, but she writes well in English. She penned an article entitled People Who Grew Up Without Seatbelts, Bicycle Helmets, or Parental Supervision Past the Front Door often describe their childhoods not as reckless, but unusually free, and that many are still sorting out which of these things that they believe. All right? There's a texture to our childhood. People describe their childhood when they said they were free. Bicycles left out on lawns, long afternoons that stretched out without a schedule, and no adult waiting to fill up the time frame of their children. Particular satisfaction of solving problems without adults interfering, navigating the neighborhood, handling conflicts with other children, or fist fights and boxing matches without anyone stepping in to stop it. You were out there by yourself alone with only yourself for company. No one was entirely sure why, where. No one was panicking about it. That was just how it was. That was the arrangement. All right. Well, that more or less describes my childhood, which I thought was a grand adventure. It was wonderful. I wouldn't change anything about my childhood. And I grew up in a COINTELPRO area of military intelligence near the Port of Oakland. I lived in the Oakland Hills off Broadway and on a side street known as Broadway Terrace, which takes you directly up to the steepest hills in the city of Oakland and Berkeley. I was on the border of Berkeley and Oakland in a very wooded, terraced area of well-kept homes. It was a middle class, upper middle class part of Oakland, and there was no supervision going on. Now, for most of my childhood, I did work. I mowed lawns, I did gardening, weeding. I had a lemonade stand in the summertime. I mowed lawns, a lot of lawn mowing, and then eventually I succeeded in getting a paper route, which was my most sophisticated and most regular work. Was for 4 years I was a paper boy. Now I put in almost a year of free paper services just to get the attention of the district advisor who controlled the paper routes. I was on a waiting list of 28. Well, I was number 28 on a waiting list, and I skipped over 27 people when I was offered a paper route eventually, about a year after getting to know Mr. Witt. And I asked him how I jumped over 27 people. He told me, I know you'll show up because you're already showing up for no pay. He says, I don't know who any of these 27 other kids are, but I know you because I see you every day. That was the advice that I took from my mother, who told me just to go up and go through the motions with the boys, help them fold their papers and deliver. and good things will happen. You make your own luck, essentially. And that's indeed what happened to me. And I rode my bicycle. I got a bicycle at age 6. I did not wear a helmet at any time, even though probably would have been an intelligent things to do since I was building jumps and learning to. Once I learned how to ride the bicycle, the next step was how to go downhill fast, go around corners without touching the brakes. My bike did not have a front brake, so that part was easy. You just skidded with your rear tire, and how to jump, like the Europeans in motocross racing, like they did. They jumped, right? So what I want you to know is that nowhere along the line did my mother or father teach me how to ride a bicycle. I learned that on my own by myself with a home that had a very large lawn. That way, when I fell off, I'd be landing on a soft lawn. I didn't wear a helmet. I either walked to school again by myself alone or with other kids, other children I'd run across along the walk, and girls and boys in my neighborhood who were heading over to the elementary school. And I walked by myself, but once I got that bicycle, usually I rode my bicycle to the school. I rode my bicycle everywhere. It was an extension of my body. And again, did not wear a helmet and did not have adult supervision at any time. And I used to go down to the Payless and buy Revell models to build World War II airplanes mostly, and ships and frigates and aircraft carriers and submarines. Of course, I grew up in the 60s, and so skateboarding was in, roller skates were in, bicycling was in. Eventually, I got a 10-speed bicycle, and I got a Continental, which was the upscale version of the 10-speed of Schwinn. Bought it from Red Cyclery on College Avenue in Oakland near Claremont Avenue. And you should know that I got into the gas-powered dune buggies, gas-powered remote control airplanes, gas-powered boats, motorboats that I ran on Lake Temescal, which was a couple blocks away from where I lived. My father bought a sailboat. We got into sailboat racing immediately. Raced sailboats for three seasons, and of course, music was a big deal. We had at the time the Beatles were big, and Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I started to play the trumpet. I went to a Catholic Youth Orchestra performance. Was enamored with playing the trumpet, so I did, and joined the Catholic Youth Orchestra. Played in several concerts. Learned to play music, read music, write music. Um, and meanwhile, we had Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, Jim Morrison, the Archies. Number one song in 1969 when Sharon Tate was murdered was a cartoon band known as the Archies, a Saturday morning cartoon. And it was the number one song. The number two song was the Rolling Stones' Honky Tonk Woman was number two. Can you believe a cartoon outperformed the Rolling Stones in 1969 in August? That a cartoon was the number one popular song. It was called Sugar Sugar, Sugar Sugar, over a honky tonk woman about a bordello in Memphis, Tennessee. All right. Then we had Carlos Santana. He was local, and he was signed by Bill Graham, Bill Graham Presents, whose real name is Jewish name, an orphan boy from the Bronx, New York, Wolf Grajonka, who became Bill Graham Presents, Bill Graham. And we had the Monterey Pop Festival, which followed the Be In Festival. And then after the Monterey International Pop Festival, we had the Magic Mountain Tamalpais Festival in Marin County, Magic Mountain. And then we had Woodstock back in New York. And then we had Altamont free concert on Department of Energy property above the Lawrence Livermore Weapons Laboratory. It's part of the Weapons Laboratory, part of the University of California Systems, who gets paid approximately $33 billion a year. to allegedly supervise what kind of weapons are made on the University of California Site 100 and at Site 200 in Livermore and Site 300 at Altamont, known as Altamont Pass, also known as Coral Hollow Road, also known as Site 300. Anyway, all of those things were orbiting around me when I was a child without much supervision. Okay, and whilst I'm getting up at 5:45 a.m. On the weekends, and delivering my newspapers again without adult help, assistance, supervision. Isn't it amazing what you can do? My first paper out had 49 papers. My second paper out had 80 papers. That's how much money you make per month, too. 80 bucks, $1 a month per paper. You deliver 7 days a week. And that was considered very good income at the time. Plus tips. You get an extra 10% or so for tips. So it's more like $88 a month or $55 a month I was earning for 4 years. All right, Ronald Reagan was the fake governor of California. Um, Before him, it was Edmund Brown, Jerry Brown's daddy, Edmund Brown, Mayor Moonbeams, Mayor of Oakland, and Governor of California, Jerry Brown. His father was not a college graduate, and he was the governor first before Ronald Reagan, and then Jerry Brown, who went to Yale. Ronald Reagan is a Screen Actors Guild actor with a star on Hollywood. So he's fake. But so are Edmund Brown and Jerry Brown. They're fake too. All right. We had Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, the Rolling Stones. We had the Monkees, like I said, Carlos Santana. And we had these concerts, which for the most part were free, like the BN Festival. That featured Timothy Leary, and I was astounded whilst delivering my papers around 1968, 67, 68, which is the time of the Summer of Love was 1967. It was right around the Summer of Love that I was horrified to learn that marijuana and LSD and psilocybin mushrooms had entered my neighborhood, and that many of my friends were indulging in hallucinogenic drugs and getting stoned. Yes, it was just like COVID. It is exactly like COVID. I had the same feelings that I had at COVID, that anyone that I knew would fall for the potato in their tailpipe and would ingest products that nobody knew where they came from, and yet everybody trusted in them, right? You know, like safe and effective. It was all BS. And now I know all those drugs came from military intelligence, CIA, and were distributed through the Hells Angels and other distribution systems to deliver to every single high school, every single junior college, and the University of California, Berkeley, University UC San Francisco, and to Santa Clara University, and to Jesuit, and to Stanford University. These drugs were delivered through local dealership operatives further down the trough so that it wouldn't trace back to the United States Army intelligence, which was participated in the form of Sharon Tate's father, Paul Tate, and Timothy Leary. Ted Kaczynski was in the picture too, but not yet publicized in the media. He was a professor at UC Berkeley in 1968 and 1969. Ted Kaczynski. He didn't blow anyone up. He was not a Unabomber. He was just a college professor of mathematics at Berkeley. But we had Sonny Barger, who I later became friends with and worked with as a customer dealer relationship. I sold him motorcycle parts. He was the president of the Hells Angels. He was a big player in Oakland, California. He's United States Army alumni. Huey Newton of the Black Panthers, along with Bobby Seale. They were the president and the Sergeant of Arms for the Black Panthers. Jim Jones of the People's Temple, he was in the mix. Ronald Reagan was governor. We had the murder of the Zodiac mystery killings, the Manson family, and of course, every day we had the Vietnam War casualty report. We also had the moon landings, the fake moon landings of July July 20th, 1969, the fake moon landings featuring Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins. So it's quite a few things going on in my childhood, and I had no supervision. Let me tell you some of the activities I did. I played the trumpet, I practiced, I rehearsed, I went to Catholic Youth Organization concerts, participated in those, dressed up, learned how to tie a tie. They didn't want me wearing a clip-on tie, so I had to learn how to tie a tie. So that was something I learned. The Boy Scouts wanted me to join, but I had no time because I was a paper boy and playing the trumpet. Meanwhile, I was buying albums, and I bought Beatles albums. I bought Al Hirt trumpet albums, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass albums. I had an eclectic taste for music. I probably would have played the piano if we had one, but couldn't afford it. And I had four brothers, so we were kind of busy. I was building tree forts everywhere in undeveloped parts for the city of Oakland, as well as in people's backyards. My own backyard, I built a tree fort. And we played basketball and we played shoe. If you remember how to play shoe, you make a prediction, then you shoot the basket. And if you miss, your prediction um, will come true. You make negative predictions. Like if I don't make this shot, I'll break my arm. And I had a young man in my backyard who said that, and he missed the shot. And then 30 minutes later, we were climbing an oak tree across the street in the city park. He lost his balance, fell backward, broke his arm. He told me he'd never play basketball at my home ever again. True story. And he didn't. He never played basketball again in my backyard ever again. But that's the kind of games we played. I organized bicycle racing, BMX style racing across the street from my home. I built jumps. I strung garden hoses over there to make mud puddles. I induced muddy situations. I built Daytona banks. I developed the park. I had weekly races there. And then in the summertime, when the days were longer and the sun was up till 9 p.m., I organized road events in my neighborhood. Two in particular. I had the Wild Goose Chase, which was a race around 2 square blocks in my neighborhood, and women and boys and girls were both invited. And it wasn't supposed to be a race. It was just supposed to be riding around, but it degenerated into a race within half a lap. Those would go on for an hour until the sun went down. Then for the more daring cyclists, I had something called the Long Journey, which was essentially about a 30-mile bike ride from where we lived in Oakland um, out to Moraga through Canyon and ending at the Jack in the Box restaurant at Moraga Road and Moraga Way, whereupon we would call our mothers and beg for a ride home because there's no way we're going to ride 30 miles back and make it a 60-mile ride. At that time, we were too young. We didn't have the proper water bottles. We didn't have the proper gearing, and we did not wear helmets. At no time did we wear helmets on our bicycles, even though it would have been smart to do so. But we were very lucky, and I didn't get conked on the head. I did get conked on the head a couple times, but anyway, I'm still here to talk about it. I played war games. I organized things along the Korean Trail, which later became known as the Ming Kong Trail. It was also part of my bicycle racetrack. And I had a BB gun, I had a toy gun. I was accosted by two Oakland police officers who were responding to a report that I had a real gun. I was sniping people. I had a toy gun, and I had the pistols drawn on me by the police who asked for my gun. I gave it to them, said, "Oh, it's a false alarm." And they didn't tell me to stop. They just handed it back and left because that's how things were in 1967, 68, and 69. The police didn't they weren't on the same kind of quota. There were plenty of murders in Oakland at the time. There were 180 murders per year. Today there's maybe 80. They're down 100 homicides a year from back when in the day. And yet things have never been more fearful today. And they were way more dangerous when I was a child, when I wasn't supervised. Okay? And I bought over 212 Revell models, which I built, and many of them I suspended from my ceiling to simulate, dogfights in the sky. My parents forbade me from racing motorcycles or riding a motorcycle or owning a motorcycle. So I went around my parents, who were quite busy with the other four children, and Carlisle Wells, Bud Wells, my friend John's father, he brought home two motorcycles to his son uh, for a person who owed him money on a tractor repair, mechanic tractor work. And I suggested that I ride one of them since you can only ride one motorcycle at a time. Anyway, they took to that idea, so I began training on a motorcycle at age 10. And it wasn't until age 13 that I convinced my parents to allow me to buy a motorcycle, a Hadaka Superette, which I rode on city land that had been forgotten about, Horse Hill and PG&E Utilities, Power Pole Hill, and some private property also I used. So we created multiple racetracks, very mountainous, hilly racetracks, and fire roads and goat trails that we created. Again, without any adult supervision at all, I'm riding my motorcycle to and from a city park, which is about 3 or 4 miles away from my home, on public roads without a driver's license. But I was wearing a helmet and I was wearing eye protection goggles, Carrera goggles, and boots. I think I had some Torsten Hallman boots or eventually, and kidney belt, etc. So I always wore protective equipment on the motorcycle, but I didn't on the bicycle. So it's kind of a juxtaposition anomaly. But I want you to know that while I was raised as a child in this area of Berkeley, Oakland, and visiting San Francisco to visit my cousins over there fairly regularly. I'm there at the same time Timothy Leary, Ted Kaczynski, Charlie Manson, Sonny Barger of the Hells Angels, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale of the Black Panthers, Jim Jones of People's Temple. They're all there too, right? They're all there too, just along with Joe Alioto, the mayor of San Francisco, Herb Cain. They were all there too. Willie McCovey, Willie Mays. I went to a Giants game and I saw Willie Mays playing the San Francisco Giants at Candlestick Park. Kenny Roberts, I saw him race at the Cow Palace, which is next door to Candlestick Park. Yes, yes. And later I went to concerts near the Fillmore West, not at the Fillmore West, across the street and a block up down Geary Boulevard, and I saw Montrose, Journey, Sammy Hagar. I saw the Tubes, saw Santana, and I saw those bands perform in San Francisco. And later I saw them perform in Oakland and in Berkeley at the Zellerbach Auditorium near the Founders Rock, near Corey Hall, where Ted Kaczynski mailed two Unibombs. Yes, I know the neighborhood well. I know where the Founders Rock is. It's across the street from the Zellerbach Auditorium off Phoebe Hearst Avenue. Yes, it is. Oh, yes. Jennifer Doudna is down the hill, not far, near the Chancellor's mansion at 2151 Berkeley Way, which is approximately 1 block from Corey Hall and 1 block from the Founders Rock of the University of California, also referred to as College of California. BN Festival, Monterey Pop Festival, Magic Mountain Mount Tamalpais Festival, Woodstock Festival, not in my area, and Altamont in my backyard, Altamont on Department of Energy property. How could I have done all of those things? And believe me, that's 1%. I have hundreds of other examples. How could I have survived LSD, mushrooms, psilocybins brought into my neighborhood and later cocaine? How could I have done that with people cigarette smoking, peace riots in Berkeley, rioting for no one was rioting, only the police were rioting. The students were protesting conscription, the draft into the Vietnam War. How could I survive Zodiac killings, which were very close to where I delivered papers? Not far. within 15 miles of my paper route. We had dead people turning up, at least three dead people turn up within 15 miles of my paper route. So, how could I survive all these things if my parents, my mother and father, didn't personally escort me around at, 6 o'clock in the morning? And I don't have an answer for you, but I think that this lady who wrote the article about, freedom versus supervision is that the gist of the story is the people like myself from my generation can handle stress a lot better than the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs are a toxic cocktail of anxiety, and they need tranquilization. They need entertainment to amuse their boredom, and they need pharmaceutical or precision medicine, e-pharmacy to tranquilize their anxiety. And that is really the point of today's video, is that it appears, uh, based on some studies that have been done, which you can read in this article that I will post below, the research has found that people who are supervised, whether it's flock cameras or ring cameras or crib cameras, is that when the children of supervision grow up, they become more anxious and they become an anxious generation. And I think we have overprotected our children in the real world, where they apparently need a lot more free time to play and learn to solve problems on their own without adults intervening. Um, this is my belief. And so while we continue to opine what to do in the human augmentation rollout of Switzerland banks, the Bank Authority, Swiss Bank Authority of Agenda 2030 and climate action, which is to basically trace and track every human being tethered to the cloud and controlling their thoughts, their tenets of thinking, their attention deficit disorder, that this problem, which is already at a catastrophically serious public safety level, it's only going to become worse when every person on the planet is supervised 24/7 with no privacy whatsoever. Most people who grew up with more freedom don't want to recreate their exact childhood for their own children. Instead, they buy car seats, and they do know about concussions. They understand that the world in which the children move around is not identical to the one that they grew up in. But we didn't have seatbelts in our car when I was a kid. There was no seatbelts. Ralph Nader hadn't come along yet. There were no seatbelts. We had cigarette lighters, and my father smoked relentlessly for a long time till we got him to quit. They smoked cigarettes. They drank martinis. They didn't have seatbelts. Nobody wore a helmet. And half the people I saw on motorcycles were not wearing helmets. But when I got into serious motorcycle racing, everyone wore helmets. Everyone wore boots. Everybody wore gloves. Everyone wore eye protection. They weren't stupid. They wanted to get their skills improved. And you can't do that by being injured all the time. That's my point. Children need to be exposed. You play with fire, you'll get burned. You get your fingers burned, like Amy Winehouse said. When you play with fire, you'll get your fingers burned. But that's an important learning lesson. You can't read a book about that. You can't go to a podcast and learn about getting your fingers burned. You can't learn how to win a motorcycle race by reading a book. You have to go and fall down a couple of hundred times. I said a couple of hundred times you need to crash the motorcycle. That's why you have to wear protection, because you're going to crash. And your motorcycle, you're going to bend your handlebars, you're going to bend your clutch and brake levers, you're going to bend your shifter, you're going to scratch up your paint job. That's what happens if you want to race motorcycles seriously. You're going to bend up your equipment and your body too. All right. So there's sorting out to do here for people that haven't given this much thought. We need less supervision, more privacy. We need to delete the ring cameras, get rid of ring cameras, get rid of LED streetlights, get rid of flock cameras, get rid of smart meters. They all need to be disconnected, disassembled, and put into a landfill facility buried 200 feet below the surface. Need to get rid of data centers, get rid of lithium batteries, get rid of electric cars, get rid of travel restrictions, And gasoline should be 80 cents a gallon, and people should be able to travel wherever they want, whenever they want, including 5 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's the world I live in. You could travel anytime, anywhere you wanted. And gas was 30 cents a gallon. Yeah, it was. It was 30 cents a gallon. It was such a big deal in 1970. I don't know what it was, 1974, 75, that gas went to $1 a gallon. And we were all offended because we were used to 18 cents to 30 cents a gallon for gas, because it should be like water. It should be like very, very inexpensive. That's the uncomfortable question that juxtaposition poses today in today's video. How is it that I could survive? I wish I could have sat down with this author, Ainura Kalayu, who was born in Malaysia and spent over a decade in Malaysia, then studied in Australian universities before she raised her family and settled in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I wish I could have spoken with her. I think I could have offered her some insight having to do with my own personal experience. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Do like and share it. Become a paid member. Um, Share my videos because I am heavily shadow banned. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day. Bye bye now.